All right, everyone. Welcome to the next episode of Dad Level Podcast. This Halloween, spooky October month of madness. Your choose your adventure. This is what you've chosen. This episode, we're going to be doing ghost stories. Of course, I'm joined by Colin, my dad, and David.
Hello, everybody.
So let's get into this fun time of the year. It's one of our favorite months.
It's October and December, two of my favorite.
So I know David doesn't have too many ghost stories, but he's going to be here to give some nice commentary. And
we'll see what kind of commentary I can provide. But yeah,
it's funny. October and December are like the scariest months of the year. One is all about frights. The other one's all about bills.
Yeah, exactly.
They both scare the crap out of me. Sorry.
They're both terrifying. That is for sure, certain.
Mm-hmm.
You start. Like I'm not Santa Claus, so when I'm checking my list, checking it twice, I'm trying to figure out who I can eliminate from my list. I haven't seen them in 2 years, and they haven't checked on me while I was in the hospital for Who am I going to buy gifts for? Your grandkids always make out like
bandits.
So
as it should be.
Yeah. It's always kind of scary though. It's October. This is the month where we have all the Halloween decorations, and then you just happen to go down the wrong aisle on Walmart and look, there's Christmas. Did I just jump in time here? Is it like after Thanksgiving?
Yeah.
Did I burn the turkey?
What I used to like to do when I could get around and do stuff is go in at the holiday season and switch decorations, move Halloween stuff over by where the Christmas stuff is, move the Christmas stuff over into Halloween, and just to confuse the people shopping, kind of help make their day a little bit. Nothing like you're looking at Christmas ornaments and all of a sudden there's a beheaded something sitting there right next to Rudolph.
So what I'm hearing is you're the reason why we got Nightmare Before Christmas.
Mm-hmm.
That's right, because I believe they're little fairies. I don't believe you should have to walk back and put anything up. They hire little fairies to come in at night and put everything back where it belongs. We should not be putting fairies out of work.
Little minimum wage fairies. Yes,
fairies. That's right.
Yeah, the same. What are these? The same fairies that we find in video games where they're called reset fairies. So like if you mess up on a puzzle, you just go out the door, come back in, it's reset the way you had it before.
That's right, man.
Yeah, we used to call them Gremlins, but they got unionized and they got some good attorneys, so you can't blame them anymore.
Even Jim Butcher writes about them in the Dresden novels.
Sorry, you just got to give them pizza, though. Those. I guess you got to get the right ones.
Just don't feed them after midnight.
Nah.
I was like, well,
that's where Halloween comes in.
I guess I'll have to bring that up on our other episode because I was actually talking with the wife earlier today. Screw it, I'll just say it right now. Growing up, I didn't get to see a lot of horror movies, right? And it never failed. I would always walk in at some extremely horrifying moment of a movie that then would make me not want to watch it at all. So for Gremlins, the very first scene of Gremlins I ever saw was the end when Spike is being exposed to the sunlight and is like, decaying and melting. And and here I am, just this little bitty kid, like, what the hell did I just watch? No, I'm good. I'm gonna go away now. And then years later, I finally get back around to it. I was like, okay, yeah, this is good stuff. But man, as a little kid, seeing that for the first, like, with having no exposure to anything scary, really, and then to have just see that, you're like, oh Jesus, what was that?
I thought you were going to tell us that was the scene where Phoebe Cates is talking about her dad dying in the chimney.
Yeah. The only part I remember about Phoebe Cates was her coming out of a swimming pool. Oh,
yeah,
wrong. That was a wrong movie. I'm sorry.
Wrong movie, wrong time of the year.
Wrong movie.
That's right.
Because after I saw that movie, that's all I ever saw of her when she was on screen. I'm sorry.
All right. So,
bless Calvin.
Who wants to, Dad, do you want to go first with some of yours? Colin, do you want to talk about any?
No, let Vince go first.
Okay. You know how you can tell that we're having an environmental change, climate change or whatever? is because when me and Colin were growing up in Houston, when you had fog, it was scary fog. It wasn't fog like, it just for miles everywhere and you can't see. Now, this was like waist-high fog that just rolled across the ground. And so your upper half is like walking through it and you can see people, but it doesn't look like they have any waist or, anything below their hips. And I've never seen that anymore. I haven't seen that since we were young. And I can remember us going over to that old church where the park benches were over by where Richard used to live. And I'm not going to give his full name.
Yeah.
And we'd be on those park benches and it'd be late at night. And then the fog would come rolling down East Haven, turn up by the church and just start rolling and creeping. And it would slowly creep up to where we were. And we'd all pick our feet up and put them on top of the picnic benches that we were on. And then it would stick around. And it would just kind of like fingers going up over the tables where we were on. We were all like laughing. And I remember one time your brother, I was like, we got to get to the car. I'm just getting a little bit freaked out about this. And he was like, Horatio, and he jumped off of the table and then tripped and he fell into the fog and he didn't get up right away. And we were like, oh shit, something's in the fog, and it got it. And then slowly he just kind of rose up out of the fog with his hair all, and he was like, yeah, I intended to do that. Yeah. And then all of us running and screaming at 1 o'clock at night on a school night through the church parking lot to where my car was parked, just trying to keep your feet out of the fog because you just knew there was a shark, a fog shark swimming in it, gonna eat you up while you were
fog shark.
While you were doing that. Just dun, 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 dun. But let me see. That brings me to mind when a buddy of mine and his house was a freaky house to begin with. And we'd always end up there like on a Friday night. And we'd either have somebody there, playing with tarot cards, or we'd play something spooky, or we'd just sit around in the living room telling ghost stories because his parents would go out of town every weekend, it seemed like. And there was a room that belonged to his brother that had been locked. They didn't let anybody go in there after he left home because they'd never heard from him, didn't do anything, and they never wanted to change the room. And so, but there was a piano in the dining room area by close to that room. And so we were on setting by the piano, and we were all trying to play different tunes. And we were trying to do it was the Friday the 13th, the Jason thing on the piano. No, it was the Michael Myers one. And we were trying to do that on the piano. And Richard was like, stop, just leave me alone, get away from the keyboard. And he starts doing it. He starts playing it perfect. And just as he got to it, he was like, hey, and he was really excited. He turned at everybody and he smiled. He goes, hey, and the lights went off. And of course, everybody screamed and everybody ran out of the house through different exits. And so we were all walking back to the house after we quit running, and we were all laughing, but he stayed in the house. And we were like, where is he? Where is he? And we were all getting freaked out because he didn't come out. And so all of a sudden the light kicked back on, and we go in and we're all walking through the house, and we're all going, calling him, trying to figure out where he's gone to. And he decides he's going to try to scare us. And so he hid into this room, a closet-like area. And so he's waiting to jump out and jump scare. And we're all like, where is he? Where is he? What, did he go outside with us? Is he still outside? A couple of our other friends went outside hollering for him, and we came back in. And all of a sudden he comes running out of the closet, screaming at the top of his lung, and just goes running right past us and out the door. And we're like, what the hell was that? And so we had to go catch him. And I mean, we literally had to run him down. And he goes, I don't want to go back there. I don't want to go. Let's go to your house. I don't want to go back there. And we were like, what are you talking about? And we'd always heard from his his parents that they saw shadow figures in the house. One time his dad went into the kitchen, turned, and he swore there was a man standing right in front of him. And when he flipped on the light, there was nobody there. You know, it's like when you look at dark, but you see dark upon dark, where one area is darker than others, where you can make out shapes. And so we didn't, think anything of it. But he swore up and down he was in the closet. He was waiting to jump out. Something put their hands on his shoulders from behind him and whispered something in his ear. And if you got to ever know Richard, that I'm surprised he didn't leave his body frame coming through the door when he ran, because he wasn't going to bother opening a door or anything as he was exiting. He was very almost Scooby-Doo, Richie Cunningham rolled up, not Scooby-Doo, Shaggy and Richie Cunningham all rolled into one person. And so we finally got him, brought him back in the house. We were all in the living room laughing about it and joking. And all of a sudden we start hearing a radio going up and down the dial. It's like somebody's going, and it goes stop on music, and it go, and we were like, where in the hell does that come from? So we're all walking around the house, and we realize it's coming from that room that is always locked. And so at first we think, okay, where is everybody? Somebody's in there and they're playing a joke on us. And he goes, no, I don't even have a key for that door. And so we were like, and we walked around, and the windows are nailed because they didn't want anybody coming and going, and they're actually nailed shut. And we're all trying to figure out what's going on. It's getting louder and louder and louder in that room. So he's like, I don't want to be here anymore. I want to go home. I'm going to go, one of y'all guys' house. I don't want to be here. And we decided to go get a crowbar because they had a barn on the side on their property, and we pried the window open, and we pushed him, and we pushed, I don't remember if it was Gene through the window, and it was dark, but you could see the radio was on up against the wall. This is one of those old timey radios, really old, and it was playing, and you could see the dials moving back and forth. Well, of course, they ran straight to the door and fiddled with the lock and got it open. And we ran in, and by the time we got into the house, the girls and everybody were in there, and the lights on, and we walk in, and we're all just standing there with our mouth open and watching this radio go up and down on the dial. And so we turned it off, and we walked out, and he was like, my mom and dad are going to kill me because they're going to know we were in there because it's locked. We unlocked it from the inside of the room, and I don't have the key for the outside lock. And I'll just say, we just tell them, look, man, just tell them the truth. We heard somebody noise. We thought somebody broke in. We went and checked the window and had y'all go into the room and everything that happened. So it was okay. And we were all sitting there. And so we were like talking about how exciting it was and kind of scary. And we're all in his living room, and it happens again. And we're all standing by the door trying to figure out, okay, are we going to go in there? And everybody's, the sad part is all the girls wanted to go in, but they wanted us guys to go in first. They were like, yeah, let's go see. It's scary. Come on, let's go in there. Okay, well, you go. No, you go. And when we walked in, it was doing it again. And the minute we got towards the radio, the light in the room flipped on and off. And we ran out, and then everybody was out waiting by my car. And me, Richard, and I can't remember what his name was. He was a football player that I knew from high school. And we decided to go in. We unplugged the radio, turned the light off, shut the door, and then we locked everything up and we left. And he stayed at my house until his parents came home. But after that, nobody really wanted to go over to his house anymore to play, and some of us did. Like, there were a few people going, oh, let's take a Ouija board in there. And I was like, nope, we don't mess with Ouija boards, We took one time we took in a cassette recorder to see if we could get an EVP. We didn't get anything. Not like we did. Remember when we were at my apartment and we were singing songs and goofing off, and all of a sudden in the middle of the tape there was that demonic voice hollering at us, Colin, that was you with me. And
yeah, that whole devil went down to Georgia.
There was well, that was not exactly the song that came up with, but we can't do that on this radio station.
No.
But we were like, oh yeah, it was funny. We were making up songs. It was really cool. And we went to go pick up my, I think it was your mom. This is before you were born. And she was working, and we were coming back, and we were like, okay, I want to hear it. So we put it in the cassette player to play it, and we're like listening to it and just laughing. And I was like, starts talking, and all the sound had cut off on it. All that was on there was that. And we were like, what the hell was that? And nobody could remember that ever happening. We never left the room. We were all there on the bed joking and laughing about it. And then that was my real first experience with EVPs. And that's when I started taking my cassette everywhere I went. Anytime there was supposedly a haunting, I just set it down and turned it on and just see what I'd get. Sometimes you get people talking. Sometimes you'd hear music, but it's the stuff that you can hear us having a normal conversation, but this is going on in the background, and we're oblivious to it. Obviously, we can't hear it. Only the recorder picks it up. But I just thought I'd share that one. Oh, David, I wished I knew you when we were younger. I'd have got you in so much trouble.
I believe it. Yeah, the majority of I unfortunately don't have very many Halloween stories. Although I guess in terms, if we're just talking about a different kind of terror, one of the very first times, actually the only time I've ever been to one of the pop-up haunted house little walkthrough experiences, right, that you have, where it's it's just the jump scare hallway, right, that you just walk through continually.
My cat's decided she's going to try to scare me. She keeps jumping up on the back of the chair and sliding down because she can't get a good perch. But
there the longest girlfriend I had in high school, her and a bunch of her friends and her dad decided, hey, yeah, let's go to one of these little pop-up haunted, whatever the hell you want to call them, things downtown Houston. So we went down there, and as we're going through, all the girls are terrified, and the whole time as you're walking through, you can just clearly look over and be like, okay, gee, I wonder if a guy's going to pop out of that thing. Oh, he did. Oh, I wonder if something's going to pop out over there. Oh, it did. Well, they're freaking out, and they're just curled up, all of them, into my back, shoving me forward constantly. Meanwhile, in front of me is, here's little bitty 5'6", barely weighs 90 pounds, me in high school. And then in front of me is this 250 plus, just jacked Samoan dude, right? And these girls are just constantly just shoving me into the back. Just constantly. So the most terrifying thing about that experience, I was just waiting for that man to just turn around and pick me up and tear me in half like Sentry did to what was it? God, the Red Carnage. There we go. I was just waiting for that to happen, right? Just me get ripped in half and get to the very end. And that was the most terrifying experience I've had on Halloween, was the existential dread of some random man ripping me in half because a bunch of girls were terrified at jump scares, slowly shoving me into this much, much larger person.
I think I was like 12 or 13. And at that time, during the summers, I would have to go and work on a farm. My dad decided that working on a farm during my entire summer was going to build character. So I got a week after school got out, went out to the Days farm and worked for them, and then got 2 weeks just before school started. And I became they lived in our neighborhood in San Antonio. And I got to know them because one day I walked by and there was a calf walking in their front yard. And I was like, there's something you don't see every day. So I walked over and I got to talking with, of course, Brad had two sisters, Denise and Pam. And I dated Denise for a while. But I was like, wow, there's a beautiful girl and she's taking care of a cat. Man, what more could you ask for? So I walk over and I become friends and talk to him. Come to find out, my dad had known him. And so we started hanging out and going to barbecues with each other and all this stuff. And then I would spend weekends over there and then eventually start working at their farm. And we decided they were going to take me to it was them. It was getting close to October and they were going to a haunted house. I've never been to one ever. And they used to have some really great haunted houses in San Antonio. One of them was an old hotel and it was just lit up and people lines going around the block. Radio station was there. It was a big production. And so we were going through this thing and you go up on the outside and then you go enter and then you come down and that's how you exit and you go out through the basement. So I'm going, they're in front of me. We had just finished a room where there was a strobe light and a guy who was hacking people to pieces. And it looked as realistic as you could get. I mean, straight out of Texas Chainsaw Massacre looking, but it was a lab. And he's just covered in blood and he comes running at you, but the strobe lights are going. So it just looks like he's moving in slow motion. So you're like running and screaming, but it looks like you're the $1 million man, $6 million man running. And all of a sudden you go into a hallway and this wall slid in front between us. They had walls that they would shift and it would change where you would go. And then it was me and these two other girls. And then we got to this floor where the floor dropped. And it took us to the next floor, but other people kept going. And I was like, man, you can't go through this thing with your people. It's designed to separate you out. So I ended up, just because I was terrified, grabbing onto this couple. And he was like, I think we've got a tail. And he kept trying to look. And I was like, holding onto his jacket from behind and trying to just stick behind him. And he goes, are you lost? I said, yeah, man, I'm so totally away from anybody I know in here. He goes, so stick with us. And then his girlfriend put her arm around me and they just kind of guided me through. And when it was over with, I didn't even know these people, but we were like, wow, that was great. And I survived everything. There was like this one wall where when you walked, all of a sudden hands came out of the wall. There was a giant part where a spider swung down and like string would fall over you. So it was like dropping spider webs on you. It's just totally well done. It was a lot of money and it was great production value. I got to the end and all of a sudden another wall separates us and they're off going to another exit. And then I'm standing in front of this guy in an orange jumpsuit with a chainsaw and just a messed up face. And he goes, and he's like, ah. And I tackled him. I was so terrified. I just ran full force and gut right into his stomach. He goes falling. There's no chain on this thing. It's just the chainsaw and it's the sound. But I tackled him so hard. He flies back. I hit the ground and I roll. And he's like, hey, kid, come back, come back. He was going to give me candy. He's like, every kid came out, got candy. He's like, I ain't going after him. They finally got out and they were looking for me. And they were like, have you seen this kid? He's like this. He's wearing like this. And he said, I think he ran down that way. I was 4 blocks away when they pull up next to me in their car. And I'm like running and looking and seeing them. And they're like, you want to ride? I was like, yeah, don't stop. I'll just jump in the window, and they just stop and they let me in. But man, it was so exciting and so terrifying. And it was made even worse because I was there by myself. I lost everybody that I was counting on to walk me through that. And my brother Gene, we went to one and he decked a guy. This thing comes at us from a side wall, and Gene's like, we're like all up against each other, and we're like, you anything comes at you from that way, you take them, I'll take this way. And all of a sudden this guy goes, run. He had like this terrifying clown thing, and Gene goes, pow, and just decks him. And Gene's like, come on, let's get out of here. Let's get. And the guy doesn't even know what hit him. He's just like laying there on the ground. And I was like,
he could hit.
Why did you hit him? He was like, you should have scared the hell out of me. We're in a haunted house. What did you think was gonna happen?
Gene could hit too, man. Oh God.
Oh God, I remember that so much.
Tony
and
and
he
I
laughed all the way through it. I was like, don't hit anybody else. Just don't hit anybody else. And as long as they leave me alone. And then he started going to it with him after he's had beers, and I just couldn't go with him with those because he would get thrown out and one time almost arrested. It was just horrible. But when they were young in Houston, they worked at a haunted house.
Yeah, me and my sister, because my buddy Jason, I did it for 2 years, 2 years in a row, from October 1st to Halloween night. We worked at that I think it was at the Fright Fest or something, or Nightmare.
Well, there was Nightmare Forest, which we didn't work, but we knew people that worked there.
Yeah.
Got in.
I can't remember what the name of it was, but I remember like it was like you worked the whole weekend, Friday to Sunday, and man, it was like $75 a night for doing everything. And for the first year, my thing was I was Jason trapped in a like this grated fence, like hanging above the people as they're passing by, and I would like grab my machete and go like this and just run it across the thing. It would light sparks and stuff, and people get scared because I had the mask and everything. It was pretty awesome. And then the second year I did something totally different. I don't remember what that one was, but that was the most memorable one, was just being able to scare people. You see these big guys walking in, it's like, holy shit. So yeah, that was always fun. But I love doing that. I miss that.
I miss setting up the haunted houses at my house. And then, growing up in San Antonio, we had this really old 2-story house with the pillars and everything, and the wooden fencing around the porch and everything, and you had to come upstairs to get to it. And we would always decorate it to do haunted house. We'd put like a coffin in the yard or hang stuff from the tree so you could drop it onto people. And then my mom worked at the mental hospital there in San Antonio. It's a famous hospital. And she was there when they were renovating it, and they found an old part of the hospital that was, when they closed it down, instead of doing a ceremony, and they walled it up and didn't say anything. But on the plans, there was this whole other wing to this hospital. So when the state came in and was doing some work on it and renovating, they knocked this wall down. And she said it was like something out of a horror movie, because there were wall chains in the rooms where they hung people that were criminally insane. There were old candelabras, what they used for lighting. It was just horrible. But of course, my mom, being a creature of horror like I was, she brought home candelabras, and she brought home 2 of the stands that were down this one hall where they had candles, because there was no electricity when this part of the hospital was built. And she brought those home, and we did I dressed up like Death, did a facials. At one point I was in drama, and so I learned how to do makeup, and I did a skeletal facial look with a hood. And then we set up for seance, and to get you candy, you had to come up and I had to tell your future. And it was basically death, trying to tell you what you're doing. And when we finished, we brought those things in to the house. They had been in her car. She goes, "I almost forgot these. I got these from the hospital for you. I figured they'd be something you'd be interested in." And I was like, "Oh yeah, these are great." But once we were done and we brought all the stuff into the house, that was when we started having some of the weirder stuff happen in that old house. But I think I don't remember what happened to him. I think my dad got rid of him. That's one of the things that disappeared out of our house, because he took them from me and he put them up in his closet. And I went back looking to steal them back. I was hoping he wouldn't remember, and they weren't there. So, but we did have a tenant, remember, the couple who ripped off the house, and they stole a bunch of my books and stuff that had been given as a kid. I had a Fantastic Four issue number 2, and they stole that. I had some really early Spider-Mans that my uncle had given me. And what really made me mad was I had I can't remember if it was a really old Brave and the Bold or it was an old detective, and they tore it. I mean, it was just laying on the ground, tore in half, like they hated whatever it was. And we came home. We had spent the weekend away, and we came home, and my dad was like, "Go in your room, check and tell us what's missing." And we were like, "What? We haven't really brought everything. We're carrying everything from outside in." He goes, "Somebody got in the house." And we went upstairs, and that's where we found they had been taking things up to the upstairs, and they've been sorting through it. And we found a bunch of our stuff up there. My dad had inherited a coin collection. It was all picked through. You got to be careful who you let stay with you. My dad trusted him and thought, because he'd been an old friend of his, and they ripping us off the line. But
that sucks.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Going back to haunted houses and chainsaws, Tony and I went through one. Guy came out with the chainsaw. Thing is, it had the blades on it. It had the chain belt. Oh, Tony looks at him and goes, "Man, what's wrong with you?" Just sitting there staring him down.
I mean, that was the big thing back in the day, though, because I can remember, when we went trick-or-treating, we were gone. The only time that my mom was with us was with, if we went, because there was like this big Halloween extravaganza, and they had George Barris there, and he had a bunch of the cars he had done. He had Adam West and Burt Ward were there, and dressed up as Batman and them, and then
right.
The big event things that you went to. But man, once my brother was done, then me and my brother and our friends, this is before we met you guys, because this is in San Antonio, we'd go off, and we just almost all night. That's why I loved when it was on the weekend. If it was Friday or Saturday night, that was our night. Sunday, you had to be back because you had to go to school on Monday. But there were people, like there was one guy, I remember, he was just sitting in a rocking chair, and he was by his garage, and his garage is just pitch black, right? And he's just sitting there, and he's got the candy bowl, and he's like, "Come on up, come get your candy," And we were walking, and I was like, "Mike, go up there and see if it's okay, and then I'll go get my candy." Mike's like, "What the hell are you talking about? You go up there." So we were like, "Okay, we'll go up together." And as we're sitting there, and he's like, "Oh, no, I'll put the candy in your bag." So we have to open the bag so he can do it. And while we're doing it, this woman with this long white wig, I mean, just huge. She was wearing this like old tiny white nightgown, and she had this funky white stuff all over. She just comes running out of the garage screaming like this at us. And man, we were gone. Candy, forget that. We dropped the bags and we were going. They were like, "Hey, mm-mm." And then one of the friends that was with us, Carlos, he's like, "Hey, dudes, y'all's candy's back there. We need to go back for it." And we were like, he caught me, and I'm like, "Where's my brother?" And when we look up down, it's not Hackberry, I forget what that street was. He's just like gone. All I see are little bitty feet. And I'm like, shit, we got to go get him because I got to get him home. So we're like running and we're like, Mike, stop. And he's like, and he finally tuckers out and he leans there and he looks back and sees two guys running at him, forgets that he has a brother and friend. And so he starts running again. And we're like, God dang it. Stop. And I'm like, Michael Eugene, stop. And he's like looking over his shoulder. And I'm like, don't. And he finally goes, oh, it's my, you can just see it dawn on him. And he stops and he sits there. And we get up and I'm like dying. I'm, bending over. And he was like, did you get our candy bag? Oh, wanted to beat the living. I said, so we walked back over there and got our candy. He was like, the guy was like, I was wondering if you'd come back. He goes, that's my wife, man. She's okay. And she came out and she was like, I'm so sorry I scared you. And we were like, just stay the hell away from us.
Here's some more candy.
We're fine. You look really good. Stay there. And then I remember one time we were all outside when I lived in the trailer with my dad and Mike and Gene. And we had that picnic bench that we built that was out there. And we'd go out there and we'd sit on that and talk until later. And then remember there was David and his sister and a couple of other ones. We were all out joking while the parents were drinking and stuff. And he decides he's going to go because he hears us talking about ghost stories. So he decides he's going to go in, and trailers have a window that opens. It's a fire escape, so you can drop out. So he gets his sheet on and drapes it over him, doesn't cut any holes in it. And he's laughing his butt off because he's just so tickled pink that he's going to scare us. And falls out of the window. And we're all like, we hear this. Did you hear that? What is it? I don't know. So we're all thinking, okay, there's something spooky going on. We're all looking for this guy. And he finally gets up, inebriated out, just out the wazoo. And he's like, gashed his head when he hit the ground. So the sheets got this big streak of blood coming through it. And so we decided we were going to go walk along the parking where the parking was for the front of the trailer. And then a couple of us were going to walk along the back end of the fence where the trailer's hooked up to all the power and stuff. And some of the girls and Mike got to him first, and he comes stumbling out from in between the trailers, and he's like, oh, and they're like, ah, and they go running off. Well, he goes, ah, because he got scared of them. He goes running towards the back way. Well, here we are coming up along the fence, and he comes running right into us going, and we're like, ah. And one of my friends climbed the chain link fence, and there was barbed wire at the top, so you couldn't get into where they sold the trailer. He goes flipping over it, rips himself up on the dang
barbed wire.
The barbed wire. And they're like, all the parents are like, what is going on? What is all this screaming? And they come over and they figure out it's him, and they walk him back into the house. They pull it off, and man, he is just gone. They're like, here's Ghost. March him into his house and put him to bed. And then we had to figure out how to get my friend back over the fence. But remember, they had that. This place was so smart. They had a recording of dogs. They had dogs that would bark and growl, and they had beware of dog signs everywhere. And dog houses with chains and everything. And if you ever ask, they go, oh, well, during the day, we lock them up. You don't see them, and we only put them out at night. We were terrified to go in there until that happened, because he was walking around trying to figure out how to get out. And he's like, man, I'm hearing the dogs, but I'm not seeing any dogs. And so later on, we got brave enough and we were able to get the fence open and climb in through it. And we walked through this place, and these were all top-end trailers and stuff. And we would just go in and set in them at night, and that would become our party. We'd pick a different one to have our parties in. And but there was always that we'd be sitting there, oh, beware of the dogs. You hear, and there ain't a dog in there, man. It's all a recording. It's all coming out of these speakers. I was like, did somebody actually believe that would work? Well, it did, because it kept us out of there for a long time.
Not a dog in sight.
Man, remember those woods by where I used to live?
Oh, absolutely.
2 houses. The one that was the 2-story where Gene jumped out the window onto the mattress. Hey, big brother, watch me. Woo! I just vision of my brother killing himself as he's falling to the ground and hits the mattress. And you hear him go, ooh! Oh, man, I'm ready to do that. He jumps up and he's ready, running up there to do it again. And then the one that was further in the woods that actually looked like somebody who would kill you would live. Man.
Yeah, especially in full-time summer, those woods were scary. Because the canopy on it was so dark because it was so condensed.
And then the spiders, man, when you got to the heavy brush, all those big banana spiders and all that stuff in there. Yeah, it was great. I kept always wanting to film a movie in there. Yeah, that was way before
now it's all
Evil Dead ever came about.
We used to do what would basically become cosplay out there later on.
Yeah.
Out there with
build forts and attack
forts
each other.
And Nerf guns and cardboard swords and you name it. There were a lot of adventures out there. And you get into some of the areas where it gets really dark and Gene would be like, phew! He'd be just like deep into it. We're like, wait.
Oh yeah, never. Well, it's just like I was watching because the trees had long branches and they were thick. You could walk on them from one tree to another.
Yeah.
And we were always like, we're gonna build a tree house in here. And I remember walking, slipping, racking myself on one of the limbs, just and then going, oh, and I fell off and I went right into this big batch of brush. And I was thinking, man, oh no, it's going to be poison ivy or something. And I'm trying to get out. And I climb out and I'm walking towards these guys and everybody's like stopping and walking back from me. And I'm like, what? And there were spiders all over me, but there was a big one. And I didn't notice it until I felt something go. And I was like, what is that?
Is it a spider?
It was a spider. It was a big spider, big banana spider. And my brother Gene, I'll save you, big brother. Comes running and goes right on the top of my head and just squishes it into me. And there's this spider guts just dripping down. And I'm like, thanks, little brother. Appreciate you got my back. I'm gonna go home and shower. And he's like patting on knocking all the spiders off. And I was like, man, I'll play in any other part of the woods. I don't go back here anymore. I hate it. And that I believe is where my spider fear started.
Probably.
Burn it with fire.
I was extremely arachnophobic for a while. And that was my answer to everything. Can of Lysol and a lighter. If I can't kill it with a homemade flamethrower, it ain't gonna die.
And the thing is, if you got one thing on fire and the way this little forest was set up,
it would have gone.
All of it would have gone. It was so densely packed together. It would have just been, wow.
And then there was that other one across Edgebrook. They built a whole apartment complex there now. Back then it was just a field, and if you went far enough, there was a little pond and this one massive tree. And I remember we'd go up and sit in that tree and just stay there the whole day. And then I don't remember who was with me. All of us hung out. And somebody was like, our parents don't know where we are. If something happens to us right now, they wouldn't know to come look for us or to help us. And we were all just sitting there leaning on these branches, having a good time. And then all of a sudden, I guess all of us had visions of something bad happening because we all started slowly, one at a time. I'm going to go ahead. I'm heading home. Drop out of the tree and they'd leave. And I remember it was me and it was, I think maybe Gene. And we were like, okay, maybe we should go. And so we dropped down and went, and then walked over to the mall. Like that was so much better.
Let's go ahead and go hang out at Amita. Yeah.
Walked over and hung out at Amita Mall. At least there we had protection. Video games, we could just pick up a console and throw it at whatever's coming.
Yeah. There's a lot of Ataris back then.
I mean, ColecoVision.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, those were just bricks.
Bricks.
Just giant bricks. Those things were so heavy.
So, Colin, do you have any stories that you remember back then, or?
Well, there was one house I was going investigating, and basically it went from a haunting to an exorcism. I'm going through the house and I'm checking stuff out and getting looking for EVPs, but I've got my EMF going, right? In what would be the office connected to a bathroom. Now, mind you, all the plumbing ran under this old house. This house was like 100 years old, okay? And there'd been, ghosts of both sides of the family had been seen in this house, okay? The father's mother, the grandmother would show up, and she was like just the peaceful one that wandered around the house. Nobody was fine with that. And then all this other stuff started happening, and then there were of her side of the family, there was connections to witchcraft and Ouija boards and fortune telling, all that stuff. So some of that stuff got brought in because they bring over Ouija boards and do stuff, and nobody really knew what they were doing. So I'm over there and I'm checking it out, and I'm in the office connecting to the back bathroom. All of a sudden, my clothes start getting pulled off me, literally getting stripped off. My shirts are coming up, everything like that. So I'm sitting there trying to deal with that, and I've got holy water splashing around and stuff like that. And then apparently the house got pissed at me because right out of the light socket directly above me, where there was no pipeline, I got rained on. Okay. Water came right through this whole lighting fixture, and it was one of the ones that was spread out. So it was like being under a shower head. I'm sitting there doing this, I'm like, what the? I stopped. It stopped. Do it again. It started up again. Okay, let me go over here. Shake, sprinkle. Shake, sprinkle. Shirt get pulled off. Fine. What is going on here? I'm like, okay. So I went back out to my car and I started getting all the good stuff, Never got any recordings, but basically what I did is I took another thing of holy oil and I gave it to the mom of the house, and she put it in her hands, and her hands turned beet red and couldn't let go of it. And she's running around the house screaming with it in her hands. Okay, that's never good.
So that was blessing oil, right? The kind that you use for blessings.
Yeah, it's basically olive oil with frankincense in it. Okay, you have you can put frankincense in and salt in water and bless it, and you got holy water. Okay, so it's basically the holy oil locked in her hands like this, good and gripped. Instead of going white, it was red, like it was red hot. She's running around the house with it. So I'm like, okay, I'm gonna need some things, and I go out back to the car, and I come back in, and I have different versions of the ritual of the rite of ritual of exorcism. Okay, over the years I've collected various versions and stuff like that, and attached Bible verses like Psalm 91, and I start going through all of that, and she's running around while I'm doing this, and I'm going through and everything, and all of a sudden she just drops. Done. Just scratch. It's like done. Just like sliced it in half with a knife. And the whole time, though, none of the oil ever got any spilled. And she had dropped it, and it was laying on its side, open, but nothing was coming out. It was just laying there. And then I go to pick her up to try and sit her down, and she was maybe $130. Okay, weight, thin girl, and she was like twice her weight. And it was more than just the dead weight from an unconscious person. It was like somebody had.
There was like more mass on her.
Oh yeah, it was like
yeah.
cement. And she started coming to, couldn't get up. So I took a couple of drops of this holy oil. I pick it up and I'm trying to get it to come out. It's still not coming out. So I'm like, all right, screw it. Turn it upside down. Give it one good thing, like a thing of ketchup. All of it at once. All over. And then she pops right up. And after that, I'm like, okay, I think we're done here.
See, you took the stuff a lot further. Now, I read White Magic and talked to people and learned the difference between what is white and dark magic, what is their, magic, love magic, and things like that.
Yeah.
I carried the electrical meter that you could detect.
EMF.
EMF. We took pendulums because of the way that if there's something in the house, the pendulum will start to swing, and you can talk to something through the way it swings.
Yeah.
We video cameras, audio free EMPs. But the worst one I ever had was a couple of scratches on my back that I didn't even notice until we got home, and I took off my shirt, and my daughter's like, Amber's like, what's on your back? How'd you scratch your back? And it just looked like something went across my back, and it started hurting. It got really painful. I had to have her keep cleaning it, and we put a Band-Aid with one of the big patch Band-Aids with antibiotics on it, and it went away. There's nothing I could have hit or touched that would have done that to my back. I don't deal with the whole possession stuff, but I will do a smudging, and a blessing in a house, and try to move the things out. Some people don't want to lose their spirits because they don't harm them, and they're more protective. So you have to be careful what you're doing, because you can actually drive out the good spirits.
Oh yeah.
And if there's something more powerful than they are, they're constantly in combat, and you will you could just throw that balance in the
take
wrong
out the
direction.
equilibrium that's in the house.
But I remember one time we were at the apartment over by where we went that caught on fire.
Arlington Place.
I think it was Arlington Place. Yeah. And it was, I'm trying to remember Amber's friend's name. I know Libby was there.
Oh, it was, what was Libby and then Jenny.
But it was the other one, the bigger girl.
Hold on. Come on.
Fast forward, Ember's watching this.
Yeah, I don't remember her name at the moment.
But and I think Jason was in the room on your computer, and they were fighting and arguing. And I had gone in the kitchen, was making food for us, and I walked towards them and I said, "Guys, you'll need to stop all of this." And no sooner had I turned my back and was walking down the hallway, that I had a shelf above my television that I'd mounted myself. So I had my candles and statues and some things up there. And one of the candles not fell, it flew across the room, hit the wall close by your doorway.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't remember if it almost hit Libby or it hit the other one. And she screamed. And I come running back in the room, and they're like, "We want to go home." Of course, Libby did. Libby was into that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But the rest of them were like, "Can you please take us home? That was just too scary." And I tried to explain to them about what a poltergeist is, and how it can be connected to a person, generally a girl, especially one who is either reached or have just gone over puberty. So there's a lot of energy in their body, and that can manifest in that kind of stuff. And another thing that happened was me and Stu, a guy I worked with, and we're both really strong-willed people. And I remember one day we were arguing. I mean, it was a real argument across his desk over something. And he had a marker for a dry erase board.
Dry erase marker.
And he was like, you need to get out of my office. And I put my hands in on his. I said, you need to listen to me. And we right up into each other's face. And all of a sudden the marker exploded. But it didn't explode like he squeezed it and it ruptured. There was a perfect
circle between them.
In his office that went up the wall here, across his ceiling, down that wall, and across his desk. But it was like we were so angry at each other, and there was such a force there that it couldn't get past there. So it followed the line of our force. I mean, it was like, and he was like, do you see that? And I said, yeah, I see it. He was like, that's freaky shit. I said, yeah, I'm getting out of your office.
This is like Akira, man.
And he was like, I'm going to go with you. And we both left his office and we went over and we were sitting and we're talking. And it wasn't my boss. It was somebody else who was like, what are y'all talking about? And we told him what happened. He's like, fool, you want? And we were like, come on, we'll go show you. Walk in his office and he's like, because y'all are painting this. That's all he said. And he walked out of the office, but Stu wouldn't paint it. He left it the entire time we were there. That was in his office. I remember
you taking me, Amber, and up there and looking at it. I was like,
this is what happens when two
wheels
or insurmountable forces clash, because we were so angry at each other.
So I remember, like, we would have weird stuff in most of the places we lived in. But I remember,
and I believe some of that can be attracted. And you know, some of the stuff we did, you know, I was always trying to be careful about the things we brought in the house. Sometimes, you know.
Well, there definitely was something weird going on with the house on Wynwood. We remember there was moments that, like,
well, yeah, even before we moved in, because Mark and his mom and them lived there, and they were talking about stuff.
Because you would see the faces in the wall. And it would look like it was looking at you, just because the way the wood grain was. But it was, you know, normally it's just matrixing your mind, kind of like
forming something out of something familiar.
But it was just too often that you would have, just like you'd have this presence, like something was looking at you. And then I remember there was the time, like what was it? There was that hallway downstairs.
Yeah, that was the one that people would not go down. They'd rather walk through the kitchen and go the other way. David, you remember that house, right? I know you came over at least once.
Which one?
This is the
one house on Wynwood.
The 2-story house.
The one that y'all moved into after the trailer?
No, before.
See, I never came over until
he didn't come over because remember it was Andrew, Lance, and.
Okay, I'm sorry. I could have swore that you'd come over once.
Yeah.
Because the house would be full of guys coming over to play video games, you know, and there was Gus and David and Vo and just tons of people in the house. But they would all go around that hall. Nobody liked to go through. In the hallway, there was a picture of Mark's mom. And this picture.
Back before we moved in there.
Yeah. Before. No matter where you went in the house, in that area, her eyes always looked at you. You could be by the front door and they were looking at you, and you could walk and it would follow you through the hall and into the living room, and you'd still see those eyes staring at you. And his brother would go, why is it I always feel like something is staring at me in the house? I was like, it's that picture.
Well, and then that was the thing. You always felt like there was something staring at you. I remember upstairs in the hallway, right around Amber's, the room that Amber stayed in when we first moved in there was weird.
That whole upstairs, right, we never knew about, but there was a whole other part of the house that, you know how like some attics have that little push thing you push up and you go up and there's just an attic. Not just that, there was a door in the wall.
Mm-hmm.
that opened up, and then you could walk around, almost get to where Vince's room was before he moved into the Josh's old room. And it was just this maze of stuff. And I was like, man, somebody could be living up here in this part of the house and we'd never know it.
No, yeah.
Because
like,
they could get out of there and never see anybody. There was a place in the bathroom, one of the bathrooms they could come out of. And I was like, why do you have so many? Why would you build a house like this? Why is there so many entrances to an attic that is really not an attic? It's, you could turn them into other rooms.
Yeah, it was enough space to.
And I hated your closet in your room.
Oh yeah.
Room.
Well,
I
that was the
hated
thing.
That being closet.
So that was the thing when I moved into Josh's room after he moved out. I remember when we got we got Smoke before, but I know that once Smoke moved in, we didn't have too much of an activity, but we did have him like looking at stuff. Remember, there was that one time we were sitting there watching a movie, and you just see him go, and he jump off the couch, crawled to that hallway, and just looked in the hallway. And we're like, "What's going on? What do you see, buddy?"
Well, remember Witchy?
Mm-hmm.
She would walk through the living room and stop, stare at something in the middle of the living room, walk completely around it while staring at it, and then she'd go over and jump up on the couch, and she would just be, you know, when a cat is ready to pounce, she would just stare at this one center part of that living room. And yeah, I mean, I love the house. You know, we did so much work on it. But yeah, that house had a lot of weird things, you know.
Because we had that was the time that I know that there was one time me and Ember were going at it, just fighting, because just we're brother and sister, we fight. And one of the mugs flew off the freaking wall and shattered where the couch was.
Yeah. No, was this not the sectional couch, not the L couch? It was
this is after we got rid of those. Yeah.
Okay.
And this is like, and we like, was that us? Because but it creeped us out. And
well, I always hated the sliding glass door because you'd hear it like push, like somebody's trying to slide it, but that latch would catch, and then I had that bar put in so it wouldn't open. But you'd be crashing on the couch, and all of a sudden it sounds like somebody's trying to come in through the sliding glass door, and you jump up and flip the light on and look, and there was nobody there. And then I used to play horror games in this house. They'd all go to bed, 3 o'clock in the morning. I'm sitting there doing this, and you'd feel that. I remember one time I was sitting in front of the TV, and the hall was right to my left, and I was playing, and something kept catching my eye from the hallway, and you could tell when somebody came down from the stairs because we kept the bathroom light on upstairs, so it kind of showed a little bit, so you get the shadows. And I was like, okay, somebody's coming down the stairs, and I'm watching to see if it was one of them, and nobody ever shows up, but you see the shadow. So I was like, God damn it. I put the phone down, and I walked down the hall, and I looked up, and there was nobody there. And I went back and was playing, and I heard some footsteps on the stairs. That creaking, remember how they made that sound when you walked up them? Yeah. I was like, okay, I'm done. This is going off. And I went to bed in my room, and I shut my door. That was one of the few houses I actually slept with the door shut. Because when they were little, my brother tried to burn us down while we were in the house, because he came over and he had been drinking, and I told him to go to bed, go to sleep. And so we all were asleep, and he decides to cook hot dogs and then pass out. And what happens to hot dogs when they get left on a stove and the water boils out? They catch fire. Well, this was one of my copper bottom pots. So it had been so hot, it melted to the stove, to the burners, and it set my kitchen on fire. Well, Vince woke up because they were the closest to that part of the house, and the house was just full of smoke. And he got his sister out of bed, and they crawled down the hallway and into my door and knocked on my door. And when I set up, I got a mouthful of smoke. and I started coughing. And so I rolled to the floor because the lower you get, the more oxygen you're going to get. So I crawled around and I opened the door and got them. And we crawled over to the window and I opened up the window to let air get in. I said, y'all stay here and you breathe this. And then I went in the bathroom, grabbed a wash rag, put it on my face, and I went into the living room. And then I could just see the fire going in the kitchen. And so I'm hollering at Gene. I said, Gene, get up. Come on, get up. You got to get up. I got to get out of the house. I couldn't get him up. So then I had to go in and fight the fire. I got the fire out. I opened up the sliding glass door, which went to our balcony, and just let air come in. I went around opening up every window. And I walked over to my brother and I was like, Gene Allen, get up. And he was just, and I was like, and I couldn't carry him out. And so I got so mad. I picked him up and I went, and I punched him. And I was so mad at him because he could have killed us. And he was asleep all through it. I had to kind of move him over by the sliding glass door so he'd get some air. Somebody luckily enough, called the fire department. They came in, made sure everything was out. They almost didn't want us to stay because the carbon built up in the house. And I was like, we don't have anywhere else to go. So they were like, well, if you leave all the windows open, you air the house out, you guys can stay. But if you gave us a bunch of symptoms, they said, you got to get out. So I brought these guys, they laid down with me in my bed, and we were there. And after that, I never slept with my door closed again. Because
he wouldn't let us lock our doors for the longest
I was
time.
like, no doors. I want to be able to get to y'all. I want y'all to be able to get out. I don't know. I just felt at that point, doors are like a death sentence. Now, all that said and done, Gene comes walking in my room in the morning and he's like oblivious to everything. And he's like, did I fall down or get hit last night? And I was like, let me tell you, little brother.
Well, but going back to the house on Wynwood, I think that was the first time I remember you telling us about the fact that you would hear our voices in the house.
I got,
because I don't remember it anywhere.
We've talked about mimics. We talked about mimics before. And the Wentwood was the time that I was in the bedroom and I was asleep, and I heard somebody holler, scream at me, "Get up, get up!" And I jumped up, and it's not easy when you're in a waterbed, let me tell you. And it wasn't one of those motionless waterbeds. This was like I'd set up, and all of a sudden I was on the high seas. And I got out of the bed and was like, what the hell? What was that? And I go walking around looking for them, and they weren't there. They were at their mom's. Or I think y'all were at your mom's. I don't know where you were, but y'all had stayed somewhere.
Yeah.
And I think you might have stayed somewhere, and Ember stayed with her mom. So, because I think that was the time when she was kind of going to her mom still, but you weren't.
Yeah, I wasn't going anymore. I know that it
might have been grandma. I don't know.
That house was, I think, the last time I remember the things that we can't talk about because you don't want to bring it up.
No, I don't want to bring that up. No.
But that was the last time I remember hearing it there. But anytime I hear the thing, I stop and I have to make sure it's not it anywhere I go, because it traumatized me and my sister and my dad so bad. Me and my sister may talk about it without my dad, but he has, he feels that sometimes you can bring.
Because every time we've kind of really gotten heavy into talking about it, it tends to
one particular
show up again.
And then,
I'm like, I don't want to draw attention to it anymore. I can tell you this much. I've never been more terrified in my life than having my children in danger and I couldn't get to them, because it felt like I had a wall between me and them. And it was their screaming, Donna screaming at me to get them, that I finally was able to overcome and forced my way to them in their beds, grabbed them, and we ran out of the house and got in the car and drove away. I've been terrified before, but that was a whole different being terrified, because that wasn't just me, that was my children. There's nothing more terrifying to a parent than their children being in danger. And I tell you what, I'd rather fight a shark than to go through that crap again.
Well, and the sad thing is, we never knew if it was something that was connected to mom anyway, because considering the fact that she was the one who kept hearing it even after we were done with it.
Yeah.
And that goes back to another thing. I remember some creepy stuff in that old house that her and Tim lived in.
The old wooden house, the one that was besides all the black widows in the ceiling.
Oh my God, that scared the shit out of me too. You just be in a house and you just see these spider nets, and I'm like, why don't you guys clean this? I'm afraid of going to sleep and waking up, not waking up because I'm wrapped in a cocoon of a spider. You think
I walked in one time to pick the kids up and was like, holy hell. And I mean, all the rafters and all up in the corners, and they were black widows. You could tell they were orb weavers, black ones. And I was like, they come down at night when they hunt. That means they're crawling all over you. If you're sleeping on that couch, you probably had a few in your mouth or up your nose.
You probably I probably digested a couple of them.
No.
So
she's like, they're fine. No.
You just gotta make sure you have Sting with you next time.
Yeah.
You need I'm gonna go get McCready wants the flamethrower. Charles.
Who wants what?
Mac wants what? What? Yeah. No, but
I told my kids a long time ago, if we ever had to fight giant spiders, I'll burn the house down. Everything I own I can replace, but I'm not playing. Nope, just torch that sucker right on down with it.
But there's I guess to bring in a little bit of levity, there's a YouTube video where I might have been a short, but somebody's sitting there and the little spiders are crawling on the ground, and they hit it with a broom, and they pulled the broom back, and it was like a pregnant spider. So then out of the corpse of that one spider, you see millions of little ones, and then it plays that song of hell no to the no, right? And it shows them like they pack up all their bags and they hop in a bus and they drive out, and then they get on a spaceship, and then you see the planet Earth get blown up. Like, nope.
I say we get on the ship, go and nuke it from orbit.
It's the only way to be sure.
It's the only way to be sure.
So, no, but
tell you one thing. I can tell you, silly string doesn't work against fires.
No, because it'll
light just as well.
The reason I know this is because Tony and I were trapped in a basement fire. There was a point when my mom and my stepdad, they lived in a converted basement, of a house. It was all topped off. And we were trapped in a fire in the kitchen. And because we were little, we'd seen, like on TV and stuff, you spray stuff at it and makes the fire go away. Well, all we had was silly string. So we're these two idiot kids spraying silly string on a fire, trapped in this kitchen, and we ended up crawling out a window that there was no way in the world two little boys could have squeezed through it, but that's how we ended up climbing up on the kitchen counter, getting out of it. But for like 2 or 3 minutes, it was just red and blue silly string.
Well, I actually was at a party where they had them, and they brought in the cake, and the people were spraying it after they said happy birthday, and before they could blow it out, it had ignited, and you just saw flames of silly string going everywhere. And I was like, that stuff is flammable. No.
What happens when Spider-Man fights Pyro?
Yeah, I get it. On that note, I used to work for Popeyes a long time ago. I was an all-pro. I was one of the trainers for the company because I'd mastered all the tests. And so they had offered me a job to go around out of state and out of the country to train people. But because of my age, my dad said, no, you're not going out of here You're going to stay here. You're going to finish school. I didn't finish school to begin with. I had to get a GED. I could have been going to Paris or wherever, but no. But
you wouldn't be on this podcast. You wouldn't be graced with that level podcast at all.
But we used to have to do where you boiled out the fryers. And I had just done 2 of them, and I was getting ready to do the last 3. Well, we're prepping to close, and one of the girls brought one of the bins, the things that you cook the dirty rice in, and she had it with soapy water. And so she was scrubbing with a green scrub pad up there, the drain. And what they would do is they'd take a paper towel and roll it up and stick it in the hole so it wouldn't drip into the hot grease, because hot grease and water don't mix.
That's what soapy water.
And so I would have to do them, and I'd take the thing over and I'd pump it out into the stinky vat thing outside the back of the store, which is where all the nasty oil went, until somebody would come with a pumper truck and take it off to make makeup and stuff out of. But she had the pan along the running board thing right there in front of the vats. And so I had just walked in and brought the filter thing back in and was getting ready to do my next one. And all of a sudden, I just see it go off into one of the vats I had just cleaned. The whole pan of soapy water. This thing starts to bubble and explode. It spills over into the next one. It spills over into the next one. And it's this chain reaction of exploding hot oil. My manager dived into the office, shuts the door. The guy who was cleaning up the prep area dived up under the prep table and is hiding. I flew up under one of the counters and slammed the door shut. I must have squished, I don't know how many cups under there with me. She ran around and dived over the register at the counter for the front. And my brother Mike, who worked with me, he just was like trying to climb through the window that you handed stuff through to the kitchen. And then finally he ran over and was just laying flat on the floor, because there was a walkway where the registers were, and then there was the counter where you put the coleslaw and the pudding and all that stuff we used to have back then. And none of us would come out until it was over. And it sounded like a volcano going off. And I could hear the manager in the, I'm not cleaning this. I'm not. Oh, she was so angry. And finally it sounded like it stopped. And I was like looking around. And you know what oil looks like after it's congealed everywhere? Oh, yeah. It looks like wax. It was covering everything. I mean, it was everywhere. And my brother's like, I ain't cleaning this up. I'm going home. I quit. And she was like, you can't quit. And he goes, oh yeah, I can't quit. And then the girls, I've got to go to school in the morning. I can't stay. The one who did it, I got to go. I'm calling my dad. Come get me. So the rest of us stayed there all night and got the store ready to be opened in the morning. And I had to boil them out, clean them up, and repack them vats, and then slowly melt the oil again and get them all prepped. Man, when that sun was coming up, and I looked at my brother and said, I ain't going to school. There ain't no way I'm gonna go to school. He goes, what school? I ain't going. No, we ain't going to school. I'm gonna go to bed. And the lady I work for, I hope she ain't listening. I don't even know if she's still alive by now. We used to call her Mama Dragon. She was like a mama dragon. She was our mama at the store, but she could turn into a dragon when you made her mad. And she goes, good job, boys, good job. And, I had to go and take it out, pump it out, had to clean the damn pumper. We just threw everything in the sink and left it for the guys who opened I know the prep cook came in, was cussing us because that sink was full of dirty stuff. But this has nothing to do with Halloween, but it was a hell of a fright, man.
No, yeah.
I was like, I can't say the words. There were a lot of cussing, new words figured out that night.
So, there's a couple stories I want to get in this episode before we kind of wrap it up. But I know, Dad, that you have the one about you guys driving home and down. What was it?
Oh, you're
Alan
talking
Genoa.
about Alan Genoa. That's where the ghost lights used to be.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. There's an area over there by where a buddy of mine used to live. And once you turned off Alan Genoa, you went off and it became wooded areas. There were a lot of houses back there, but it was just gravel roads. And they went in like an H pattern. You'd have straight roads and then a bunch of crossing roads and then mid roads. So you could circle around in there for a while if you're being chased without, actually, having to turn around. It was a pretty big area. And we had found out and heard, they used to call them will-o-wisps or other things. And people who lived there would say you would see a light at the end of the road and it would come like it was coming at you. But it wasn't like a headlight. It was just a light. And so it was either purple, green, and red were the colors that people describe most. The one we saw one at once that was almost a bright yellow. But Randy, their mom, Colin, I don't remember if you were with us this time or not. I don't remember if Tony was with us, but I know we had a car full of people and we went driving looking for this thing. And we got way back towards the back of where it all ends. Because remember, Alan Genoa ended over there because there was nothing there. It was all fields, Remember, Black Hawk was a dirt road. You could drive up to where the sand pits were, where you could go swimming. But, it isn't anything like it is now. It's all built up.
Yeah.
But back then, it was just all dirt and spooky road because the trees would overgrow and it would make tunnels, like you're driving through a tunnel, but it's just trees bending over the road. So we were driving and I remember pointing out and saying, hey, there's where Brett lives. And we passed him and we went down and then we cut across and there was some kind of factory back there. And I believe they made fire extinguishers and firefighting equipment. And we drove by that and then we were circling around and we're just going the road trying to see if we could provoke whatever this was. And all of a sudden it was there. I remember your brother, Randy, saw it and he was like, hey, do you see that? And we're looking, and I'm looking through the rear mirror because I'm driving and everybody's looking out through the back window and I'm trying to look through this is when I had the old Delta 88, remember? I could fit like an army in there.
Yeah, I think it was a boat.
And we were driving and I remember stopping and we're like, okay, let's see if it's just sitting there or see if it's coming or it's moving because you really couldn't tell. And we were sitting there and it slowly was coming. You could tell it was getting closer because it was getting bigger. And so at one point, all of a sudden it turns off. And I was like, I think that was a car. There's no way or a motorcycle because of the way it turned off one of the side roads. So I was like, let's go. And everybody's like, no, let's go look for it. So we went to look for it. And then I went thinking, trying to head it off because I could figure out where it was going to be after it got down that road. And we got there and there was nothing. So then we were winding our way back to head out because there was one entrance in at that time, that one road. It was the only way in and out of that area. They hadn't built the other one to 35 yet. So you drove in and out on the same road. So we were trying to head out. And then it got behind us again. And then it started chasing us. And then we started getting afraid because it got like right up on the tail of our car. I mean, not so close it was touching me, but it was there. And it looked like a gas ball. It's always what I thought, like, what do they call it? Ball lightning might look like. But we kept whipping down roads thinking we'd get away from it, and it would turn down. And then sometimes it would disappear and it would be ahead of us, coming at us, and I'd turn down another road. Well, we finally got where we on the one road out that went into Alan Genoa Road. And I remember hitting that. I don't know how fast we were going. And I fishtailed out off of the gravel onto the cement. And as we were driving, we were all looking back. I mean, everybody was piled in my rear view back window looking at it, because we were sure that thing was going to shoot out of the road and come after us. And it never did. And I saw that light on three different nights. One night I saw it when I lived there. I lived over there with a friend, and I was coming home really late at night, 3 o'clock in the morning, from work. And I was like, hated the fact that there were no street lights here. It was just all dark. You know, the only lights you have are from your headlight and the red glow from the back of your running lights or your brake lights. So when I got to his street, there were only two houses on the street. And so there was always light there. They always kept their outside lights on at night. And I remember noticing something coming up the road behind me. And so I was like, well, I'll go past the house, take a left, take another left, and then come up this other road and then go back to the house, just to make sure somebody's not following me. Because you don't ever want to lead somebody where you're going if you think you're being followed. So at one point, it just kind of wasn't behind me anymore. So I went, pulled up onto the grass, locked my door, and ran into the house, and everybody was asleep. So I couldn't tell anybody about it. But I always wondered, after they incorporated all that and built it up, I wonder if anybody else ever saw anything.
Sees it, there. Yeah. Anything. That'd be a kind of cool thing to find out and investigate into. You know, because there's that insane asylum that's over in that area too. That's down if that you go one street. Yeah. I don't know if it may still be there. I don't even know anymore. But I know that when we were at the trailer,
well, not just that. There was, if you go down far enough into past 149 and you get into where the water by the ocean over there or by the bay, there was a house there that they were a cult, and they killed. It was like one of those suicide cults, and they killed themselves. And they were it's all built up. It's a beautiful house, but it was all built up. And it had a wrought iron gate that went all the way around it. And then the tree, not the trees, but remember we used to have all those growing what do they call them? The growing vines that used to like get on Grandma's house. They were all over the fence. So it looked like a hedge maze in a way, but you could see the wrought iron. And back, there was a time when I used to do a lot of extra stuff work in movies, because I wanted to get my SAG card, where you do so many movies, and then you get invited to do where you speak. You have a speaking role, and after you get 3 of those, you can get your card. And so I was like, man, I can't wait. This is what I want to do. And I would take my vacation time from work, and that's what I did whenever we were filming. And we were going to film a movie there. And we they had us come to the site and everything. They had the production people there, and then all of a sudden it got shut down, and they closed it down, and the movie never got filmed there. I don't know what it was, but they had us show up, and then they sent us home.
So, 2 more things. So I know that maybe we should do an episode on scary places around Houston with maybe some stuff in San Antonio. Just like haunted locations and things and the stories around town. Well, I think that'd be a good idea, but that could be a whole other episode.
Right, what I was going to say is that older cities or cities that are connected with like a lot of deaths, San Antonio, New Orleans, they have a lot of deaths. So there's a lot of hauntings. up here towards this area where I'm at, where there were a lot of hangings and lynchings and things like that, a lot of gunfights, there's talk about it being haunted, but it's not everywhere.
No. And we just talk about, because like, you know, even in Houston, you have, well, in Galveston, you have the building that has the child's face on it.
The child's face, yeah.
There's and we can talk about that in that episode. There is, you know, there's the hauntings and you can hear the stuff over near the San Jacinto Monument, you know, because
well, yeah, that was,
yeah,
I remember doing that a lot.
I remember you take us over there and we doing all that kind of like, and feel that was really cool. Just it's creepy, but and then even like the incidents of things that, you know, when we went to San Antonio, we were walking around downtown San Antonio and happened to be passing by the Alamo, and we heard stuff.
Oh, it's just like going over to where the Battleship Texas used to be, going hanging out there overnight. You couldn't go on the ship, or going by where Wolf Park was, where they had the submarine back in the day. Mm-hmm. That was always a little spooky. So, you know.
But yeah, I definitely want to get into that, because maybe then like Colin can talk about like stuff like that for up in New York where he's at.
Yeah, we've got Spy Island here, which was a major Civil War battle site, and one of the most famous spies is buried there. That's just a few miles away. And of course, our town was part of the Underground Railroad. We have like 7 places that are historically marked as part of the Underground Railroad, which is where we've done some of investigations and stuff like that.
And I mean, New York State, man, is just,
yeah.
I always wanted to go there, you know, just for some of the investigations and things, you know. And then, of course, my infatuation with all things related to the not Indianapolis, but
the Philadelphia experiment.
The Philadelphia, well, but I'm trying to think of
the Manhattan Project.
The Eldridge, and everything that happened out of that, and Montauk, and all that other stuff.
Yeah, that's all. You know, that's all 6 hours south.
So
yeah,
the last 2 things I want us to talk about, Dad, is going to be your dream growing up battling death. And then I want to kind of finish it up with you talking about the dream you had that involved Mike in the house.
Oh, you mean the night that my dad freaked out? All right, so the first one, which was the first one?
About death.
Okay.
Your reoccurring dream.
I don't know if y'all have ever experienced where you have a reoccurring dream, but it's different, but it's like the same universe. It's very familiar. It's got the same people. It's you know, just like as if you're watching a TV show. And it actually literally got to the point where I would almost hear, stay tuned next time, folks, same bat time, bat channel, you know, that kind of monologue in my own mind. But my dreams for after I had my appendicitis and almost died up until I was about 10, recurred around me always having to escape death. It was never modern times. It was never like in the time I was actually living. It was always the 17th, 18th, 19th century kind of stuff. If I got in the dream, I got the feeling that if I could escape him, I got to wake up. But if I didn't, then I was going to die, and I'd die in my sleep, and that would be it for me. Now, I'd grown up with spiritual people. My grandmother was very spiritual, and she brought stuff over from the old country with her, and she had an altar in her house where she would pray. She was very Catholic. She said prayers and talked to us about things. She would fast. We always had, she'd make us carry certain stones in our pockets, or, you know, each one of us got a patron saint that we wore around our neck. And so I was a very spiritual kid. Up until I was like 12 years old, I wanted to go into the seminary. I wanted to be a priest, and wanted to deal with this kind of stuff, because there was a lot of things I saw in Grandma's house, especially after Grandpa died. And then one time we went back to visit, and Grandma had died, and I didn't get to go to her funeral. When I got there, I had really bad asthma growing up in New Orleans because of the weather. One of the reasons we moved to San Antonio was it was drier. I didn't have as much humidity, and it helped with my breathing. But I didn't have my medicine, and so I had. My mom was coming, and she was going to bring it, but her flight wasn't there. But it was me and my brothers, my grandmother, and my Uncle Frank, and not my grandmother. I say my grandmother because she was with me, and I'll explain that. Me and my brothers didn't want to sleep in Grandma's old room. And so they had a long foyer living room, coming off the front door that led into like what would have been 2 bedrooms, a big, massive dining room, and then a spiral staircase that went upstairs, and then the kitchen, and then her, at the back of the kitchen was her root cellar and everything else. And I didn't have it, and I had a really, really bad asthma attack to the point where I couldn't breathe, and I thought I was going to die. I couldn't even call for help, and my brothers were asleep, and I couldn't get anybody to help or to help me. And then I was going in and out of it, and then all of a sudden my grandmother was there, and I didn't think of her that, oh, she's gone. It was her. She had a way of saying Vinny. That's what she called me. And she picked me up and set me in her rocking chair, which they kept. They just never got rid of it because it was her favorite chair. And she went off, and she used to make this herbal tea mixture for me. And I would sip it, and it would make the asthma kind of go down. And I remember I was sitting in the chair, and I was just trying to breathe. I was trying to breathe. And she came in, and she handed me the glass, and she goes, sip this. And I was drinking it, and she goes, you're going to be okay, baby. I'm here. She goes, remember your prayers and all this stuff. And she was just talking to me, and she calmed me down. And I fell asleep. And in the morning, my Uncle Frank was like, you okay? And I was like, I had a bad asthma attack last night. And he was like, well, is that why you're sitting in Grandma's chair? I said, no, Grandma picked me up. She got me off the floor and helped me. And beside the chair was the mug that she brought me. And he was like, where'd that come from? I said, it was Grandma's, that tea she used to make. And he kind of got that look on his face like, okay. And because I'd heard that he and other people who stayed in the house felt her presence. That's how powerful she was. And that day we stayed because I was still having problems breathing. And somebody went to the airport, picked her up and brought her. And she goes, I'm sorry, I thought I put this with you, your medicine. I took it, and then we went out that night, and I explained it. Everybody was at the table. We were at a restaurant. She was like, they were all asking me questions. What happened? What happened? So I explained it to them. And, nobody said anything to me. They didn't go, oh, he's a crazy kid, anything like that. But because of that, I always felt like there was, a connection. And so the fact that I also used to have dreams where the first one was, have you ever been asleep and all of a sudden you feel like you fall and you hit your bed, and it felt like you fell from like 2 or 3 feet, and your bed shakes, and you're like, oh, I fell, wait a minute, how could I fall when I'm laying down? And I had a lot of out-of-body experiences. So I started reading up on astral travel, how you protect your body, when you're out of your body, the ethereal thread that connects you, and what happens and how the danger that your body's in when you're not, your consciousness is not in your body. It's just a shell with this tether, and other things can go in, and there'll be other things that try to attack you while you're out there. And so I was having a lot of that as a kid. There would be some of them where I felt like I was flying through my house, and then I'd fly and go out a window and then just be traveling. A lot of them were where I would just start to fly about 3 or 4 feet off the ground and just soar, but not fly in the sky. It was like I was hovering across the ground and just going around. And it was always, at night. It was like I'd do it when I fell asleep, and then I'd go off on these little adventures. I say that because that leads into the part about what he wanted me to talk about my brother and my dad. But the one about the death occurred a lot. I had 2 of them, dreams like that. One were these little white pillow-looking creatures that were trying to eat me, and they would just swarm all over you and bite on you. And I had the first one of those dreams at my brother Pete's house when we went to New Orleans for a visit, and they found me in the dream. I ran out of the bedroom where I was, and they were chasing me and attacking me, and I ran into the bathroom. And in the dream, they were hitting the bathroom door, and it was breathing, and it looked like it was going to bow, and then it exploded, and they went all over me, and I felt like I was dying. And then I screamed. Well, when I woke up, my aunt and my older brother were there, and the kids are all looking at me like I've lost my mind. And they're like, what's going on? And I was like, why am I in the bathroom? Because I was, like almost beside the toilet and the counter. I was trying to get as far away from whatever these things were. And, that was the first time I ever had the dream about them. And they would be recurring too. But the one with the death was the most frightening, because it was always almost right on me, almost getting me. And I would always have to figure out whatever puzzle was there that was blocking me or outwit him. And the one that stood out the most revolved around this windmill. And it is a spooky old windmill that was used for like grain, where the windmill would turn the grain, the grinder wheel and everything. It was a grain house. And the closest I've ever seen to that that I saw in my dream, which is windmills have always haunted me, but not like you'd see in not Denmark or whatever. No, these are those old New England or that kind of granary looking windmill, like the one from Frankenstein, but the one from Sleepy Hollow was when we went and saw Sleepy Hollow. When that windmill came up, I was like, I got all tense, and everybody was like, "What's the matter?" And I was like, "I'll tell you later." Because it was like I was witnessing the same windmill, except whereas theirs was, it was a field, but it didn't have like wheat. Where I I ran through the wheat, and he was chasing me with a sickle, and he was cutting through the wheat as I was trying to get lower and lower, and I have to roll, and he would taunt me and talk to me, and he would tell me he was going to get my family, or he was going to get my brothers. And I ran in, he chased me up to the very top. I was able to knock him down, and I wrapped a rope around him, and it started pulling him into the grinding area, the stones. And I set it on fire, and I ran out, and I woke up. And so watching the fire happening on the one on Sleepy Hollow was just like, wow, somebody reached out of the universe and yanked that right out of my head, because that was just like it. Except my death wasn't Christopher Walken, which I didn't know who Christopher Walken was at that time anyway.
When you think about the fact that you had these pillow creatures, which is almost very similar to young Sherlock Holmes when Watson's being attacked by the pastries trying to.
Oh, I would have eat there, but
I understand, but
an eclair come
then,
attack me, it's dead meat.
And then on top of that, you have like I know you had almost the same reaction too with Army of Darkness whenever he runs to that windmill.
Well, Army of Darkness, and then I always had a sense that this wasn't my only life. You know, I've always felt that I'm an old soul, even, you know, when I was young. And I've always been drawn to ships, you know that. And I love the water. I love sailing ships. And I love old whaling stories and movies and books and things like that. But I always had a dream. I always felt that that's how I died, that I was drug underwater by like a massive whale or something we were trying to catch. I got tangled up in the line, and I just feel like I was drowned and drug off. And then I remember one night Ray was up watching this movie, and I was like, dude, you keep dragging me out of my sleep, because I was sleeping in the other side of that was in one of our apartments when he lived with us. And I was like, Brandywood. It was Brandywood. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I come walking up, and I was like, I don't know what the hell you're watching. Is that Whales song? And he goes, oh yeah, it's about a giant turtle, and they use whales for its sound. I said, man, that is making me have horrible dreams, man. It's bothering me. And he was like, well, sit down and just watch it. You're up now. So we watched the end of it. And one of the guys, Carl Weathers' character, he gets drug underwater just like that. And it was like, whoa, man, I've been here. I've seen this before. I did this. This is too real for me. And I got up and walked out of the room, and he comes following in there. And I was sitting on the edge of my bed, and he was like, what's the matter? And I said, man, that was just, for some reason, that was like a memory being triggered. And he goes, how? And so I told him, and he goes, that explains why you love the ocean. That explains why you build ships and all the things I used to do. I just was drawn to it. I love the salt, the smell of salt water. My biggest fear is deep water, and not like in a lake. I mean, like at an ocean, being in water where I can't see what's underneath me, and it just goes on as far out as the horizon, and it's just like stars above me. That is I think my biggest fear. And I had to overcome that, because when we'd go fishing with my dad, we'd sleep overnight in his little boat, and like you're like right there. And it was a constant reminder of the splashing on the side of the boat. You know, hey, this is your worst fear, and you're on this. If anything happens, you're going to end up in this water. Mm-hmm. But to kind of bring this around, because I know it's getting late and people are going to want to go. I would have these dreams about, you know, out of body. When I was in the, when my appendix ruptured and I almost died, one of the nurses told me that when I was under and I came out, they came in and talked to me, but it was like I was not there. I couldn't tell them my name. I couldn't tell them anything. It took me almost 4 days to get to where I was coherent and understood where I was. And I thought, oh my God, I'm in heaven. Everything is white. There's toys all over the wall. And who is this gorgeous woman right in front? I was a horn dog. I came out a horn dog. I'm sorry. 6 years old, I was macking on women. Okay. But I was like, the first thing I told her was, am I dead? And she goes, no, honey, why would you think that? Because aren't you an angel? And she goes, oh, you're a sweetheart. Yeah. And she was like, oh yeah, I'm going to take really good care of you. But they had said that while I was out of it, I kept talking about seeing myself over myself while they were operating on me. And that I floated up to the roof of the room and could have gone through it, but I was too afraid. And so I stayed right over me. And at one point, I went right in. I could see myself flying into my body, you know. And I was about not quite 10 years old. I was about 9 when that happened. It kept happening after that. You know, I told my mom about it because it bothered me. And she was like, oh, don't, it's just dreams. Don't worry about it. And so I started picking up books, and I started talking to one of the ladies that lived next door. She was 88 years old. And she's like, honey, there's lots of things you're going to find out that in the world, that exist. And one night I was asleep in my bed. Mike and Jean were in the other bed in our room. And I remember feeling like I was floating. And I can remember looking around the room, looking down the hall towards through the kitchen to where the living room was and the couch was. And I could almost sense everything that was going on around me. And that I could hear there was a noise or somebody was moving around in the house. And then I turned and flipped over and was staring at my face and just looking at me and going, is that what I look like? Kind of like, and then I floated up to the ceiling and was like, I can't, okay, all right, I'm getting crushed against the ceiling. And I'm like trying to push my away from the ceiling. And when I did, I kind of floated off into the room. And then all of a sudden, I see my brother get up and he looks over at me, and I'm still laying in the bed. And he stands up and he walks in to go to the bathroom. And I kind of I'm going to float. So if you left we had a door here and a door here. If you left this when you went into the kitchen, if you went this way, you went into the washroom, which then connected directly to the bathroom. So he went in, and I was like hovering in the bathroom, and I kept staring at the big dining room area. And I was like, there's something there. I can see a shadow there by the bar door. It's just standing there. And I see Mike stop. I hear him stop, and I turn to look at him, and he's like looking, and I'm like, oh, he's hearing this too. And you could hear something breathing, something moving. The floor, we lived in an old house, so the floor is creaked. You couldn't sneak in this house because it made noise. I remember thinking, come on, let's go up and get back to the room. Come on. And I was getting really anxious, really afraid of what's going on here. And all of a sudden, I saw the realization of Mike looking into the dark hall, into the dark dining room, and he gets this look of terror on his face. And he starts to run, and he starts running through the washroom, and I'm looking, trying to see what is it he's seeing. And then all of a sudden, I realize he's going towards me. And I'm like racing my brother to my body, and he's running at me. And I got into my body just as he wakes me up. And he grabs me. He goes, Vince, somebody in the house. Somebody's in the house. And I go, I know. And he's like, what do you mean? I said, I saw you. You just got out of the bathroom. He goes, how did you know that? And I got up, and my brother Roger had given me a baseball bat that I kept under the bed. And I grabbed it, and we started to walk towards that doorway. And I was like, he's like, should we wake up? I said, no, let Jean sleep. And I'm like clutching the bat. And I see a shadow like walking at me, and I'm running back to hit it. And my dad's like, what the hell are y'all doing? Because why are y'all up this late running around the house? And, both of us said, there's somebody in the house. And he's like, what do you mean there's somebody in the house? And we're like, well, turn on the light. We'll show you. He goes, don't turn on the light. If you can't see them, they can't see you, And so we walked to that door, and he was staring, and he was like, okay, his gun, I told y'all, he kept over his bar. So it's like on the other side of the house from us. If there was somebody there, we never would have got to it. And so we heard we had a big deep freezer in the dining room by the table. And I heard that kick on. And then we heard another noise. And my dad was like, okay. He hollered, who are you? What are you doing in my house? And he told Mike to run this way, because both ways, went back around into the bar and the front door and the stairs upstairs. But Mike could run if he ran through the other kitchen, through the living room to where the light switch was. He could flip it on, and my dad said, it'll blind him and we'll get him. And so my dad was like, he's walking, but he's kind of got his arm on my shoulder and done nudging me forward. I got the bat, and he's like, go on. When we get in there, if something comes at us, you swing, just swing as hard as you can. And he's going, I'm going to run into the bar, and I'll reach up and grab my gun. And we start walking, and we see the shadow move out of the dining room and into where the bar was. And then I got fearful that Mike was going to run into it because that's the way he's running. And we get through that one doorway that led into the bar. My dad heads through the bar to get to where the shelves are. And I go in, and I'm like, Mike. And I'm screaming, running towards where I think my brother's going to be. And Mike flips the light on. There ain't nobody there. Nothing. We walked the house. We went upstairs, walked upstairs. We locked everything up. My dad was like, y'all stupid shit. You got me so friggin' upset. I was seeing things. And we were like, we saw it. You saw it. And he was like, just go to bed. Just go to bed. And so he goes to bed. Me and Mike go in there. Mike lays down and I lay down. And Mike goes, how did you know I went to the bathroom? I said, I saw you. And I explained everything that happened. I said, just as you got to me, I went right back into my body, and I was already awake as you were coming at me. I knew everything. Now, I've never experienced anything in that detail like that again after that night. I had other things that happened. But
we'll get into that another time. Yeah, but I know that this is what led into the whole thing of what happened with Paw when we went up in those stairs.
Oh yeah, these were, this is the house where all that happened. Mm-hmm. And whatever was there, whatever my dad saw one day when he was there by himself, made it where he did not like to be in that house alone. And we'd heard rumors that an old lady had lived there and she had passed away. They had wanted her to be taken to someplace like a home, because she wasn't able to take care of herself, and she passed, and that nobody checked on her for a couple of days, and so she wasn't in such good shape when they got her. And I remember my dad was, they should have told us that when we bought the house, but we could never find anything on it. Not like, it wasn't like you could go online and look up an obituary. Yeah. Back then you had to go to the library and try to find microfilm, or you had to go and look up the old newspapers. And as a 10-year-old, I wasn't really that savvy into doing how to do all that stuff. But my mom had experiences in that house. I told about the old lady that both me and my mom saw.
Yeah,
that one night, the whole incident in the kitchen, which we'll get into.
Well, and that's what will be part two, because I mean, there's the stuff that happened with me, with the old hag, the shadows in the old apartment back when, the ones over there off of, where was it at? Old Highway 3. Those apartments back over there in that area. Where there was that.
I know which ones you're talking about. Not the ones where you ran across the street, right?
No, not at Scarsdale, but this is the.
Yeah. No, I'm not talking about Scarsdale. Scarsdale was further down. The ones that were by the high school, by the old video store. That apartment is where that guy killed his wife and his kid, and stuffed him. Well,
that's the one that's the one where I completely I went out chasing after some kids and got lost. That's another story we can tell too.
Yeah.
But no, this is the one where
that was when we moved out. When that happened, I came home and all the police were there. We were like, okay, we're gone.
This is the same apartment though that I think I lost my cup toy.
Oh, that's further down Highway 3. That was where Catnip got killed. That was the house. That was the apartment where it all the thing I don't like to talk about started.
Because that's where I remember Man, I'm getting a goosebump talking about it. I'm not going to go too deep into it, but I remember there was things that I remember telling you about that I would feel in the hallway around.
Well, and that was the apartment where things would just be moved.
Yeah.
You'd set something down and you go to do something, come back and you go, I just set something, a drink down here. I set something else here. We had
be gone. Yeah.
There were
I remember
friends who
toys
come
missing.
over. There were friends that would come over and they would hate. They wouldn't want to stay. And after Catnip got killed there, that was when I was really
right. Now, isn't that because I know that we stayed in one apartment complex and they didn't allow kids. I remember
that was over by Sandalwood Villa, I think is what that was called.
We had some experiences
when you were
there
pregnant,
as well.
Your mom was pregnant there, and then when you were born, we moved into an upscale apartment over a Park Place, which was all adults but no kids, and we hid you for about 6 months.
Yeah.
And then they caught us finally and then made us move out. That was the place I had the Scarsdale one was fun. I had my whole balcony turned into like a Hawaiian island. I had a hammock strung up. I had my own palm tree and my TV out there on a thing. And on Saturdays, I'd watch MTV and drink my drink, which I used to make pink lemonade, which is not lemonade, but
yeah. There's quite a bit. I know Amber's got a bunch she wants to talk about. Hopefully we can when we get her on for part 2 of this, we can have her tell, when she would go ghost hunting and stuff like that as well. And like, I know they went ghost hunting this past weekend. Maybe she wants to talk about it.
Yeah, of course, my grandson's interested in this stuff, so he's wanting to get into it. And I'd rather him go with somebody who knows at least a little bit about it. I mean, we don't have our own radio show. We don't have a TV show or anything like that, but we have got experiences and we know to some of the things. Yeah. And like we went to New Orleans to do the haunt. We,
oh yeah, I remember that.
And we did the mausoleums that were above ground, the whole church, the old area.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff we can still talk about. So, and I guess we can. Is there anything you guys want to add, real quick, Colin, for a wrap up?
Colin's got tons of stuff.
He does.
Well, I sent a video through the messenger.
Yeah, I did see that. I haven't looked at it yet, but
it's a place called Spy Island. I mentioned it earlier. You get all sorts of stuff. You actually hear audible voices without having to use a recorder. We got one. My cousin and I got one, and I sent that to you. And it's a Native American voice, and to this day, nobody can actually translate it because it's hard. It's so rare of a Native American tongue that we send it down to the universities and stuff. They can't translate it.
And that's the thing about the EVPs. All these people who get them, sometimes they're just like all in English, and you're like, wait a minute, nobody here in this era spoke English like that. So then you got to get into okay, what is it, and is it trying to trick you? Because sometimes you get a hold of the
wrong type of entity talking
right,
to you.
Yeah, and they will pretend to be one thing and they're not.
Oh yeah.
So,
but yeah, there's, there are people who have visibly seen spirits in different levels of corporeality. There's been time displacement over there. I mean, literally anywhere from minutes to hours.
I was just reading about somebody who was talking about when you talk about time displacement, that there was an explosion. Remember with what's the Hadron Collider? I think.
CERN.
Yeah, when it exploded and they had to shut it down for repairs, that believe that we created an alternate reality that everybody shifted into. There's a really interesting science paper on it, and him arguing the reasons why he believes that to be true, because quantum physics. Whoa, what happened?
You kind of froze. I mean, we've been hearing you, but like your camera froze.
No, it was a bunch of stuff appeared on my screen all of a sudden.
Oh.
Yeah.
Well, hey, we're
talking about all this stuff.
We're tapping into the universe right now. So
stuff carries and follows you, and I've been experiencing it here the whole time. That's why I've been getting away from the camera, because I got stuff going on like now in the house.
And I've talked to you about things here that are, when it gets really bad here, the one thing I can say about a haunting is that you have more power than you think you have.
Mm-hmm. You do.
And
words have power,
but you don't, you have to, this is my home, let no spirit here, that has evil intention cannot find a perch here. They have to move on. But
that's the one good thing. Like I tell Edward, I mean, this house is protected. I mean, between Hannah's grandparents and me being here, I told him there's nothing he needs to worry about from that stuff, because it does not set foot in his home.
And you give some of it. Some of it's pretty powerful, but you can give some of it power over you if you're not careful and you're not doing the right thing. But the guy with the whole time slip kind of makes a lot of sense when you think about all the so many new cases about oh, come on, I'm getting tired. What do you call it when you remember something different than what it
butterfly effect?
Yeah. Or
no, they've
Mandela.
got a term. Mandela effect. Firefly is like when, butterfly is like when you remember something slightly different than everybody else. Mandela is when it's on a massive scale.
Yeah.
And like a whole large population remembers one thing, and then everybody else remembers it different. And then if that's the case, and it is slippage, why are some people able to remember and some others aren't?
Some aren't. Yeah. So, we can go into this a little bit further another time. So I know it's kind of getting late for us. It may not be late when you guys listen to this next week. But so I do want, it's that time of the episode where we're going to go ahead and give the shout out. This week, I want to shout out my buddy Lyndon on his YouTube channel, which is Old School Games and Stories. It's a really cool dude, loves sharks and things. And, he plays a lot of Atari and just retro games. Really cool dude. He was one of the guys that nominated me for YouTuber of the Month back in June. Of course, I was so close to winning, but I didn't. It's okay. It was really cool to be nominated to take part in that. But check him out. He's currently at almost 200 subs. He makes great content. He's funny. So give him a check. Check him out. Description down below. Now, as far as everything goes for this point forward, we're in the choose your own adventure. Now, there's going to be 3 options this time. First option is the next episode will be about either us talking about horror movies, video games, and all that media stuff. That'll be option 1. Option 2 will be us getting kind of a little bit deeper with Colin if he wants about, some of his, investigations and things. And then, I'll have my sister on and my dad with their stuff, and we can talk about that. David will be here as well as to give his commentary, as long as he's willing.
Or sit there and look pretty.
He's a cheerleader. Yeah. No. That'll be number 2.
David's almost like he's absent.
No, what it is, it's a rolling GIF.
Yeah. So
I'll just get and I'll just start doing this. Oh, hold on, I gotta back it up.
Yeah.
Now tonight, David's gonna have one hell of an experience, and he's gonna be like, "I gotta talk to you."
I hate you guys.
Yeah.
Don't bring that up.
He's gonna come in and that chair's gonna be spinning in the middle of the night on its own.
It's going to be like, where's the rum? The rum is gone. No. So, and in episode 3 will be us talking about, the ghost stories that we've heard around the cities we grew up in, and stuff like that. So you guys pick 1, 2, or 3. Let us know in the description down below of this episode. And then we will make it happen for you. We really hope you enjoyed this time of us talking about ghost stories. It was a really fun blast. And I'm glad I got it on video with us talking about it. So I get to cherish this forever and on, and so Edward can enjoy it. And same thing with our my
so
nephew and niece.
So Edward can grow up and go, my grandfather was a quack.
Yeah, these guys are crazy. No, but
before you completely sign off, just so I can add a little bit extra to this episode, I've been randomly looking up jokes and things just to be able to throw in, because to lighten moods and such. So I dug this one up, and I feel like it kind of goes into what Colin was saying, where a ghost was attempting to strip him. So there was this old couple that hadn't really celebrated Halloween in a number of years, and they decided they would go ahead with it this year. So they're like, yeah, we're going to dress up and really get into this holiday. So the old woman goes into the bedroom. She comes out completely naked with a rope around her waist with a lemon hanging down in between her legs. And husband goes, you can't go out dressed like that. She goes, yes, I can. I can dress up as anything I want. You can too. It's like, all right, fine. So he goes in the room, right? After a minute, he comes out. He's completely naked. He's got a rope tied around his dangling with a potato at the end of it. She goes, you can't go out like that. He goes, absolutely I can. If you're going to go out as a sourpuss, I can go out as a dictator.
I was wondering where that was going to go. I was trying to figure that out.
I'm going to die here. All right, so there we go. We can always end an episode with David coming up with some kind of funny joke at the end.
David's joke.
I'll go find a joke.
This will be David's moment of zen.
David's moment of zen and calming. The moment that, it's like your Snow White movie. When you watch something scary, you want to watch the most purest movie you can to kind of get your mind clear. And Snow White's the best one.
Well, I don't know about Snow White, but yeah, a little bit of levity. Break it up. Get you
like deep thoughts.
I want to watch Lion King. No. Anyway.
What was the guy from old Saturday Night Live? Not Deep Thoughts, but
Deep Thoughts with Jack Handy.
It was was that real?
That was Sandy. That was Franken and Davis doing stuff on Saturday Night Live.
On the Saturday Night Live, yeah. Because there was the one where he would like, y'all like me. Y'all are,
Stewart.
Yes, I can't remember what the skits were, but man, I used to love those.
The daily affirmation type of thing.
Yeah.
That's
our David.
Yeah, that's our David. All right, everyone. We hope you enjoyed. We'll catch you next episode. Later.
Pleasant dreams.